Hi there everyone, welcome back to On the Flip Side. My name is Adam Shawwalker, and I would like to formally apologize to the British for not being up to date on my stereotypes. In one of my more recent videos, I claimed that the British have bland food, and in fact did not capitalize on Indian food like they should have. I now realize that this was a tragic error, and that my assumptions made about the British are horribly off the mark, and I wanted to correct and perhaps heal this wound from this most egregious error. And so I have attempted to update my stereotypes about British people. Hopefully, this will suit everyone involved. British people love to stand in lines to get their teeth strategically beaten out of place and will thank their assailant when the deed is done. Then they will wait in another line to get their mandatory stabbing on the way to the shops to get ingredients for steak and kidney pie. I hope this has mended my relationship with the British. God save the Queen. Where were we? Ah yes, welcome back to On the Flip Side. My name is Adam Shawwalker, your host, and today we're going to be checking out this new album from Pixies, Doggerel. Pixies are always one of those bands that have been very tangential to other bands that I do really like. I have of course heard Doolittle and Surfer Rosa, they are pretty much essential listening at this point, and I like those albums, but I haven't listened to them in a very long time. I do credit Pixies with creating and contributing to a musical zeitgeist that led to some of my favorite acts. Even though I don't necessarily think a straight line can be drawn here, I don't think bands like Radiohead or Soul Coughing or Cake would have existed without Pixies coming first. To me, it's a bit like the butterfly effect, but for music specifically. So why is it that when I go to listen to Pixies, they just don't really enchant me like I would hope they would? This album is actually pretty decent in the larger scheme of things. There are a couple of songs on the album that do have a tendency to go in one ear and out the other, but for the most part, most of the material here is very listenable and mostly catchy. But when any of these songs reaches that point, there's no real moments that push these tracks over the edge into being modern classics. Vault of Heaven, for example, has this really solid hook and these twangy, almost Western guitars, and these lyrics that sound like the singer has attempted to stumble to a 7-Eleven convenience store, presumably while, really fucked up, and instead just misses his mark entirely and ends up in outer space. Which here I think is a pretty obvious metaphor for being so blitzed that you're just mentally somewhere else completely, full-on blackout. Which as a track is just very simple, it's silly, and it's stupid, and I really like it, but there's nothing in any of the writing that makes this track feel like it's more than novelty. Dregs of Wine has a very similar vibe where the singer is talking about the adventures he had in the 90s with his now wife traveling all over Los Angeles and heading out to Las Vegas for a general debauchery. And it's heartfelt and it's really nostalgic, but while it gets close to feeling like a track that could be really iconic, it just kind of ends up feeling like a pretty run-of-the-mill alternative punk track. Especially during the chorus, which isn't really delivered with anything that could be mistaken for passion. Really, I think the absolute closest that this album gets to something that is really interesting is probably the tracks Get Simulated and There's a Moon On. First of which really feels like it's tapping the feel of their late 80s material perfectly with a touch of Fantastic Planet era failure. There's a Moon On is this alt-rock track that feels like the singer is almost hitting this cadence that's similar to mid-50s rock and roll, kind of like Elvis in a white suit shaking around the mic stand type thing, although it is more subtle than that, but it's really like an alternative take on that early rock from the way the song is structured to the lyrics. But past that, I found the rest of this album to be totally okay. No Matter Day, as an album opener, has a pretty catchy bass line and some Iggy Pop-esque vocal work that is pretty cool, and it does have a fairly dramatic lilt to everything, but it's a little bit one-dimensional, as are a lot of these other songs. Haunted House especially has me feeling like this album, like the title suggests, is really a loose collection of songs that do work together, but at no points ever feel particularly necessary to any other songs in this grouping. The Lord Has Come Back Today. It feels like they're pulling from some late 2000s Porcupine Tree for this slow, reverb-heavy intro, which then pulls back into a much more predictable, much more straightforward alt-punk song. It is a song that I almost think is really good. It's definitely one of the better cuts here, but it's still eh. Thunder and Lightning has a similar style to the last song, except it doesn't really commit to anything past this very light guitar strumming and very polite drum work, which is fine. This track specifically is probably the most forgettable here. Pagan Man and Who's More Sorry Now both feel a bit generous in their inclusion here, the former more so than the latter. And at this point in the album, you can really get a feel for just how much they're leaning on one style of song structure, and it's not like a bad sound or style, it's just that it becomes more and more redundant the more it comes up. You're Such a Sad to See and Doggerel both work pretty good together as album closers, with both songs feeling more and more intoxicated as the tracks go on, though neither song feels like it has much of an impact past a couple of mellow, bluesy guitar solos that are fine. So I think at this point in the Pixies' career, they're not quite phoning it in, but I think that they are looking for the door, and this album has its moments and is completely competently produced, and it is mostly a decent experience all around. But I'm thinking as it sits, Doggerel is a solid 5. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of this album in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe. And if you like what I'm doing here, consider dropping a tip in the PayPal, and check out my Instagram, my Reverb, and my Depop. Links to all of those are in the description below. Thank you all so much again, and we'll see you on the flip side.